Welcome to episode 146 of the Family Answer Man podcast, where today we're talking about when depression hits the pastor's family from a biblical worldview. I'm your host, David Orgis, and I'm here with Dr. Mark Crosby. He is a pastor, educator, mental health professional, and of course, he is a resident expert here on the Family Answer Man podcast. Now, Family Answer Man is not a therapy session. We're not able to give specific advice to your unique circumstances, but we do want to encourage you for in-depth answers to your questions, to seek out professional counsel for your unique circumstances. Do want to encourage you and ask you before we jump in today, if you'll hit that notification bell and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you never miss an episode of the Family Answer Man. That would be fantastic. And as always, if you rate and review the show on your favorite podcast app, that helps get our show out to more people. And you can also just directly share the show with your friends and your family so they can join you on this journey of building stronger, healthier, and happier families. Well, Dr. Mark, good to be here with you today.
Yes.
We've got a great question that, I think a lot of people may have asked this question, maybe privately or maybe thought about this question, but never asked it out loud.
Right.
Do you find, talking about when depression hits the pastor's family, do you find that it is something that pastors deal with on a regular basis, on a normal level as maybe other people, or more or less?
Yeah, I think one of the things that the pastor's family that they will experience that other families may not, at least on the level that the pastor's family does, is the proverbial fishbowl. That everybody gets to have an opinion on the pastor and their family. The ladies in the pew, the men in the choir, all get to say, well, so-and-so, they dress this way, or she dressed that way, or why is he driving that, or how can they afford this, and why didn't they go there, why did they do that? If the pastor's son, gets caught, going to a concert that maybe the church doesn't think he should go to, it's a scandal.
Right.
But if the accountant's son goes to the concert, it's not a big deal. So again, there's that element. Also, pastors are always on. It's rare that they're ever off, if you will. And so because of that, there's going to be burnout. There's going to be fatigue. And that will carry over into the pastor's family. If a pastor takes his wife to a nice restaurant, someone will say, well, I guess we're paying you too much. There's going to be those comments. And so the pastor kind of has this sense of shame. Maybe I shouldn't go to the fine restaurant. But if the physician brings his wife to the restaurant, that's really nice. It's not a problem at all. So there's those standards that pastors have to struggle with and deal with. Whether they're the car they drive, what their kids do. If the pastor's daughter's on the dance team of the high school, there's going to be those who are critical of that. So there's all sorts of things that pastors' families deal with because they live in the fishbowl. Excuse me. Because of that fishbowl element, they're going to have this sense of hopelessness and this sense of struggle and this sense of we cannot live up to expectations. And there's sense of we cannot do what normal families, quote unquote, get to do. So because of that, there's going to be a sense of depression. There's going to be a sense of fatigue, a sense of burnout that we'll experience with the pastor, with his wife, and with his kids, and sometimes with extended family as well.
Yeah, that's, I know you talk about the fishbowl and the kind of being visible from every side.
Right.
That's something that I think some people probably can make the connection to the pastor, but I think often may have disconnected from the fact that also trickles down to the family. So I'm looking forward to talking about that today.
Sure.
If you have a question and you would like that to be answered on the show, we would love to answer those questions for you. You can email familyanswerman@liveoak.church. Familyanswerman@liveoak.church is a great way to get in touch with us and have your questions answered. And we love hearing from you guys. We love hearing your comments, your questions, your encouragement, the prayers for us in the show. And so we're going to get started today with our question, which came in and said that our church has been through several pastors in the past 2 years. Each one has said that they're bummed out, they're depressed, they're joyless. This has impacted our faith in a negative way. Is this common for pastors? And what is a church supposed to do? How can we minister, grow in our faith, and learn if pastors are not staying?
Wow. So a quick stat, and that is, on average, most pastors will be in a church maybe 2 to 4 years.
2 to 4 years.
Depending on the denomination, but there's the kind of the turnover rate. 2 to 4 years is kind of the national average. It's rare to have a pastor at a church for more than 10 years. For those churches that do have that, they're very blessed, and I will argue even more rare for over 20 years and even more rare for over 30 years. So you kind of see the breakdown. Those first 5 years of a pastor's ministry are the most difficult. The dropout rate is very, very high in those first 5 years, right out of seminary or Bible college or after the ordination. And the reason for that is because, again, as we're about to discuss, the expectations are high, the demands are many, the criticism is great, and not everybody wants that. Not everybody, wants to be a part of that. I had one pastor say to me years ago, he said he's pastored for 25 years. He said, looking back, he said, I love the church and I love the Lord, but pastoring was one of the most difficult things I have ever done, could ever do. He was in a secular job at that time after 25 years of the ministry. And he said anything other than pastoring is considered part-time to him.
Wow.
He said any other job is considered part-time. And the reason why he's saying that is because he could say, in this secular job, I have a designated time off.
Right.
I have weekends. I have holidays.
You have your vacation.
I have vacations.
Right.
I have no one critiques what kind of car I drive. No one critiques, whether or not my kids are going into a Ivy League school or not, or whatever it may be. And so he was saying that, but in the pastorate, he said it was so difficult because of the constant criticism, the constant expectation, and not only that, but everybody can do your job. It's worse than coaching.
Worse than being the
right,
your head coach. Yeah.
Everybody can be the head coach of LSU, right? I mean, everybody can be the head coach of the local high school. But it's worse than coaching because everybody can do your job. So anyway, here's some points to ponder when it concerns depression.
Okay.
And that is depression can come to anyone. And we need to be mindful of that.
Yeah.
No matter who you are, how spiritual you are, how spiritual you think you are, how much you know the Bible, depression can come to anyone. As a matter of fact, some of the great men of the Bible struggle with depression. Right. And if you read the Word of God, you discover that Moses struggled with depression. King David, Elijah, Peter, all struggle with depression. Some of the great pastors of yesteryear and even today have omitted, and I should say, have declared that they have indeed struggled with depression. And so Charles Haddon Spurgeon, one of the great pastors of the 1800s there in London, England, struggled with depression. He said that he would avoid going over bridges for fear that if a wave of depression hit him, he may jump over the side.
Wow.
Louis Giglio said that he struggled with depression for many, many years and that he thought he would never pastor again. So depression is very real. And so many struggle with depression, both clergy, laity, doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter your profession. So it hits you. So what is depression? Well, again, just a brief review for those who may say, is it just, being sad all the time? I mean, that's a part of it. Some out there may not believe in depression. Right. I had parents, both my mom and dad, did not believe in depression until they got depressed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so to them, depression was something that, again, is only for the weak, only for those who don't have enough faith, only for those who feel like, that everything should be going their way.
Well, I think that's a great point for parents, too. You say, a lot of parents don't believe in depression, but there are a lot of children and adolescents that deal with this.
Absolutely.
And, parents can be a great resource for them.
So depression is real, and so because it hasn't hit you yet doesn't mean it's not real, but it's real. And so here are some of the basic symptoms of depression. Number one, feeling sad, empty, hopeless for more than 2 weeks. So if there's a feeling of sadness, emptiness, and hopelessness in your life more than 2 weeks, that's a sign that depression is there. A lost interest in your activities. Feeling tired all the time. There's this constant sense of fatigue. Insomnia. When you cannot sleep. And again, by the way, as we've said earlier, getting a good night's sleep is one of the best things you can do for your brain. So feeling tired all the time, insomnia, feelings of worthlessness. No one cares. I'm not worthy. I have no sense of, purpose in life. And so this feeling of being worthless. You can't think or concentrate. You can't concentrate on your job, your profession, your activities. You cannot concentrate on any goals. Inappropriate guilt. I feel guilty all the time. I did this, 10 years ago, and I still carry the guilt. Not receiving that forgiveness, if you will. Thoughts of suicide. Again, suicide is definitely on the increase among almost every profession by name. Yeah. And so it's, as a matter of fact, an interesting stat, more people die of suicide than die of homicide.
Wow.
And that's something that we don't really hear about very much, but more people die of suicide than homicide. Wow. Loss of caring, where you just don't care anymore about your family, about your job, your career, your faith, yourself. And then there's loss of purpose, as we said earlier. You just don't feel like you have any more purpose in life, nowhere to go in life. So what's the cause of depression? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Many will ask, and there's not one cause, and there's not one cause that fits all, if you will. But one of the things that I've seen in my practice is that when a person's life doesn't match up with where they thought they would be.
So when their life doesn't match up with
where they thought they would be. So for example, you take the pastor, for example. Some pastors maybe at this point in their ministry may feel like they should be at the first church, and of the community, and they should have 1,000 people in church, and they should be able to delegate more of the responsibilities. But where they are, they're not at the first church. They're at the little church down the road, tucked away, behind the store. And they have maybe 100 people that come, and they've been pastoring for 25 years. And they have to do all the work. They have to preach on Sunday and be the janitor on Monday. They have to be the youth leader on Wednesday night, and they have to, go with the men's group on Friday afternoon. They have to then clean the church on Saturday and hopefully get a sermon in ready for Sunday. So they have to do it all. And they are thinking, this is not where I thought I would be right now. I thought I could be more of a delegator of responsibility. I could just focus on preaching and teaching, and that's not where I am. I thought there'd be at least a couple of hundred in my worship service, but there's only 100. And so when a pastor is in that part of their life where their life doesn't match up with where they thought they would be, that creates depression. That's just not pastoring. That's almost any profession.
Right.
And so if you're listening and you're not a pastor, don't turn us off because we're talking about families who are depressed, pastors' families in particular. This can be any occupation. Mm-hmm. So when where we are doesn't match up with where we thought we should be or would be. Number two, there is a sense of loss, or when there's grief because of the loss maybe of a loved one. Pastors have families, and they lose moms, they lose dads, they lose spouses. Unfortunately, in some cases, they lose children. And so loss of loved ones can create a grief and a depression. Loss maybe of an important area of life. They used to love golfing, but they can't golf anymore. Or they used to love fishing, but they can't fish anymore because they don't have a weekend like most individuals may have. Maybe a loss of position, or a loss of job, or a loss of purpose. So depression comes when there's a sense of loss. Thirdly, a guilt or shame, not living up to everyone's expectations. Pastors are notorious for trying to live up to everyone's expectations. Right. Why didn't you preach more exegetically? Why didn't you preach more topically? Why didn't you preach short sermons? Why don't you preach long sermons? Why don't you preach good sermons? Why don't you preach more Old Testament? Why don't you preach more New Testament? Why don't you preach on Thursday night? Why don't you preach on Wednesday night? Why don't you preach on all three services? Why don't you preach only one service? So trying to live up to everyone's expectations really is depressing, and you feel this guilt or shame when you don't. Mm-hmm. And so pastors constantly struggle. Why don't you visit more? Why don't you go to the hospitals more? My Aunt Matilda's next door neighbor's third cousin's nephew's ex-husband was in the hospital, and you didn't go see him. Okay, so there's that, and so pastors struggle with this, and there's that guilt or shame, especially in the beginning when you're trying to be pleasing and you're trying to be accommodating. You want everyone to like you, and that's one of the traps and problems that many pastors in the first 5, 10, 15 years of ministry begin to struggle with. Therefore, feeling nothing is ever good enough. Everyone's your boss. One of the problems of the church, some will argue, is that it's the only quote unquote business where the customer is also the stockholder. And so everyone has a voice. Everyone has an opinion. Everyone is your boss, or at least they think they are. And so the pastor has to deal with that. Yeah. Then there's a comparison trap. Why isn't my church the size of Andy Stanley's? Right. Or why isn't my church the size of Joel Osteen? Mm-hmm. How did Joel Osteen get such a big church? And I went to seminary and he didn't. And therefore, but he's got a much larger church and he's got a worldwide following. There's that comparison trap that a lot of pastors get into. And when you compare yourself for too long, depression hits. Also, there's chemical imbalances. Chemical imbalances are very real, maybe due to lack of sleep, due to a poor diet, due to fatigue. But when the neurotransmitters of your brain get imbalanced, that can be a leading cause of depression. Isolation and loneliness. Most pastors will tell you that they feel isolated. They feel lonely. They cannot, go to the barbecue like anybody else and just sit down and talk and visit and cut up and tell jokes and talk about, life and talk about ball games and give their opinions politically or give their opinions about who should have been the first round draft pick or, what team, is terrible this year, what team is going to win the Super Bowl. They can't talk like that because if they have an opinion about something, especially a political opinion, now all of a sudden, you shouldn't be saying that. You shouldn't have that opinion. I disagree with you, and you're the pastor. And so there's that. So most pastors keep to themselves. Yeah. There's a sense of loneliness, a sense of isolation. Not only that, but if they laugh at a joke, if they tell a joke that maybe is just a little bit non-pastoral.
Non-pastoral. It doesn't even have to be inappropriate. Just non-pastoral.
Just non-pastoral. Right? It's kind of like all of a sudden they're judged and they're critiqued and now they're brought before the deacon board or whatever. And so one pastor in our area used to love to run, and he began to run without a shirt on. And oh boy, did he catch it? Because it was July and he's running without a shirt.
South Louisiana.
Or cutting grass without a shirt or whatever. Right. Yeah. And so there's a sense of isolation and loneliness. Not only that, but most pastors live their life tired and fatigued. Why? Because they don't take time off. They don't take their breaks. Sometimes they feel like they have to do it all. One of the first questions that I think a board needs to ask their pastor is, what day do you take off and what day would you like to have off, and how to help them guard that time off. Most pastors try to be someone they're not. Every pastor has as their heroes, Billy Graham or Charles Stanley or whomever. Right. But the reality is that if you try to be Billy Graham, you're going to struggle because you're not Billy Graham. If you try to be Charles Stanley, you're not going to be Charles Stanley. If you try to be whatever favorite pastor you have, you're not going to be them. Mm-hmm. And if that is your goal to be like them, sometimes that is that unattainable goal, and you're going to find yourself being depressed. Not spending time with loved ones. Not spending time with your wife or your kids or your extended family, because there's a meeting every night and there's sermon prep and there's visitation and there's people you've got to see and there's that hospital call, there's that funeral that you weren't expecting, and the list could go on. And so not spending time with loved ones. Not only that, but for some pastors, the Bible becomes a textbook. There was a time it was your source of meditation. It was your source of comfort. It was your source of inspiration. But over time, and this is one of the great pitfalls, the Bible becomes a textbook, and the church becomes a business. And when you land into that area, now you don't mean to, and you didn't start out this way, but when the Bible becomes a textbook and the church becomes a business, and you're more concerned about nickels and noses, then there's going to be a problem. Because now there is a sense of depression that will begin to find its way into your heart and life. So when things aren't profitable, depression hits. That's the point. So this is why hundreds of pastors leave the ministry every month. Hundreds of pastors leave the ministry every month.
That's such a staggering statistic.
Well, what's even worse is that suicide and divorce among pastors is growing. The suicide rate and the divorce rate among pastors is increasing. Wow. And so not only that, but addiction, infidelity, and other moral problems are growing in the pastorate. Yeah. And this is what's going on. Depression does this to a person. Depression, when not treated, causes you to say things, do things, live out a life that, again, you do not want to live out. That's not who you are. But depression, when it takes over, begins to impact you in ways you never thought. And not only that, but most pastors think they're bulletproof.
Yeah.
Most pastors think they're the savior of the world. Most pastors think that this is not going to apply to them. And before they know it, they're burned out, they're fatigued, they're depressed, and they're getting involved with something or someone they know they shouldn't.
So if depression is so real and it's so prevalent, and as you said, it's even growing, especially in the pastorate, what can be done?
What can be done? So recognize this. Number one, if you want to keep count, and pastors, if you're listening, we're just talking about, again, depression coming into the pastor's family. We're talking about what depression is. We're talking about what depression does. We're talking about why pastors get depressed. So what can be done? If you're just tuning in, this is where we are in the last 9 or so minutes of our program. So what can be done when depression comes into your family, into your life, into your ministry? Number one, recognize that most, and this is for the church right now, so if you're a deacon, if you're an elder, if you're on a church board, I want you to kind of pay close attention. Recognize that most pastors are trained, educated professionals. We forget that. Theology is as complex as law.
Yes.
We forget that.
Yeah.
Many in the pew feel like anybody can be a theologian. That's not true. That's like saying because I watched Perry Mason back in the 60s, I can be an attorney. That's not true. I don't care how many sermons you've heard, unless you're trained in theology, you're not a theologian.
Yeah.
Just because you've heard and watched, maybe your favorite lawyer show, Lincoln Lawyer or whatever you're watching these days, doesn't make you an attorney. So recognize that most pastors are trained, educated professionals, which means this. Secondly, that most of them work a minimum of 50 to 60 hours per week. Therefore, I will argue their pay should reflect other similar professionals.
Yes.
If a particular position requires a master's degree or a bachelor's degree, or in some cases a doctorate degree, and they work 50 to 60 hours, they need to be paid and compensated accordingly. The Bible says a workman is worthy of their wages.
That's right.
That scripture is just as prevalent as John 3:16. But many pastors forget that. Many deacons forget that. Many elders forget that. Many boards forget that. But your pastor is a trained theological professional. They work 50 to 60 hours a week. They're called to do multiple things. Some things they were not trained to do, but they're called to do those things. I've seen pastors, try to fix the toilet bowl, okay, because somebody's got to do it,
right?
and Sunday morning, and who's going to go to the restroom if it's not fixed, and so again, they have to do a multitude of various things. They need to be paid accordingly. Next, if you're a church board, or if you're a deacon, if you're an elder, place into the pastor's job package an annual retreat. They need to have a sense of community. They need to have a place where they can go and just share their thoughts, their feelings, their experiences, their concerns, their problems. Number 5, have a support team of elders or associate volunteers. Now, when I say that, many will say, we have elders. Well, let me ask you this question. Are your elders a board of directors, or are they associate ministers and those who are able to help in ministry? I'm talking about visiting the sick. I'm talking about bringing communion to Miss McGillicuddy. I'm talking about, answering the phones. I'm talking about calling to see so-and-so. I'm talking about going to see the shut-in. I'm talking about going to see that member who hasn't been there in 25 years because, they didn't bring pudding to the church social, 25 years ago, and they got mad and left. Go and talk to that person. But the reality is that have a support team of elders, because, again, your pastor needs to spend anywhere from 20 to 24 hours per week on average of preparing the sermons.
Yeah. Yep.
If you want the sermon to have good content, good sound theology, and be, again, able to be heard and embraced by the vast majority of the congregation.
It really is amazing how many people will say, we want better sermons, and also we want you to do less prep.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah. That's like saying I want a kid with a sophomore's education to do surgery on my kid.
Right.
Take his appendix out. So anyway, so have a support team of elders or associate volunteers that can help in ministry. Not be the board, not be the critic, not be the person who knows more about pastoring, even though you've never been a pastor, but be a person that's willing to help. Pay for continuing education. Your pastor needs to grow in their education. Have a support team. What I mean by that is this. A support team would be this: those who would watch the children of the pastor so they can have a date night. Those who can watch the children so the pastor and his wife can go to a ball game. Those who be willing to say, hey, every Monday night, every Wednesday night, I'm going to spend time praying for the pastor and his family. But have that support team that's there to help the pastor. Maybe these people can watch the kids for a weekend so the pastor and his wife can have a weekend off or whatever it may be. So pastors, what can you do? This is what the church can do, but pastors, pay attention. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about pastors in depression, pastors' families in depression. So pastors, here's what you can do. Number one, take your day off. Take your day off. There's a reason why God instituted a Sabbath rest. Now, I've said that to other pastors. And one pastor said, we've heard this before. This is pretty universal. Well, the devil never takes a day off, and I'm not going to take a day off either. Well,
it sounds great.
It sounds great, but when you burn out and when you leave the ministry and you start selling cars for a living, how that works for you.
Yeah.
But the reality is that pastors, you need to take your day off. Number two, be yourself.
Yeah.
Be yourself. You're not Billy Graham. You're not Charles Stanley. You're not Louis Giglio. You're not Andy Stanley. You're not Joel Osteen. Be you. You have a style. You have a brand. Be yourself. Grow in your strength. A lot of pastors try to increase their weaknesses. And so I know that sounds noble, but the reality is that if you're on a scale of 0 to 10 and your weakness in an area is a 3 and you get it up to a 5, it's still mediocre. Yeah. But if your strength is a 7 or 8 and you move it up to a 9, people will want to pay for that level of excellence. So grow in your strength. Develop your leadership style. Most pastors don't know their leadership style. Know what your leadership style is. Learn about leadership styles. Develop your leadership style. Focus on what only you can do. Someone else can visit Miss McGillicuddy. Someone else can, cut the grass, the Sunday before. Someone else can do the flower beds. Figure out what it is only you can do and let that be your focus. Give what you can when you can. You're not omnipresent. In other words, if you're off on vacation and someone is having surgery, don't rush back. Give them a call. Someone else can visit them. Enjoy your family. When you get back, then you can see them. But how many pastors have left their vacation and hurried home, to take care of something? Take off your holidays. Take off on holidays. Don't work the 4th of July. Don't work Memorial Day. Don't work Labor Day. Take off on your holidays. Find a mentor. Find a counselor that you can confide in and talk over life and help make decisions. Most pastors don't have that. Fight and persevere. By that I mean this: beware of your shelf life. A lot of pastors will leave at the first sign of a conflict. Work through it, fight the good fight of faith. Next, keep your boundaries. Keep your boundaries high, because there will be people who will try to tear down those boundaries. You need to know how to say yes and know how to say no. Real quickly, to the spouses, children, and friends, pastor's job is not easy. Expectations are high, stereotypes are unrealistic, demands are many, and criticism is regular. Some will love you no matter what, and some will despise you no matter what. That's just part of being in this particular profession, this particular ministry, this particular calling. Even Jesus made it clear, not everyone's going to like you, and you don't want to have a life where everybody likes you. That means you're not doing something right. This is why knowing your calling is so important. This is why keeping your life balanced is so important. This is why being real with yourself is so important. This is why focusing on what God is doing and having a thankful heart is so very important in ministry. Having a sense of thanksgiving will get you through a lot of depression, a lot of heartache, a lot of hard times. Again, as I said earlier, fine-tune and specialize your ministry. If you are an administrator, then administrate. If you are a teacher, then teach. If you are a pastoral care person, let that be your emphasis. But fine-tune and specialize your ministry. Remember that depression, like doubt, is not the problem. It's staying there. Depression, like doubt, is not the problem, but staying in that depressive state, staying in that doubtful state, that can be the problem. So get the help you need. See a therapist. You don't have to tell anybody. That's why it's called therapy and counseling. It's private, it's confidential. But get the help you need. Get the joy back in your life. Fight the good fight of faith and fulfill your calling.
Well, there you have it from the Family Answer Man